The problem with most villains isn't that they don't have enough. It's that they can't imagine an enough. What if the stories we've been telling for thousands of years aren't really about villains at all, but about the choices every one of us faces? Welcome to Spiritual Geography. I'm Joni Miller. I watched a clip from an early James Bond movie the other day. Goldfinger has Bond strapped to a table while a laser slowly inches toward him. Bond, naturally, asks the questions everyone is thinking. Do you expect me to talk? Goldfinger's response is one of the most famous lines in movie history. No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. It's a wonderfully over-the-top villain scene. The wealthy mastermind, the elaborate plan, the belief that ordinary rules don't apply to him. But what struck me wasn't the laser. It was the fact that we've been telling versions of this story for thousands of years. The details change. The villain may live in a castle, a volcano, a secret island, or a futuristic headquarters. They may wield armies, magic, technology, or unimaginable wealth. Yet, the underlying character rarely changes. They accumulate more than they need. They seek power beyond what any one person should hold. They value control over relationship. They believe their vision justifies whatever it takes. And the people harmed along the way become acceptable collateral damage. So, why do we keep telling the same story? It isn't merely that humanity is fascinated by villains. I think it's because humanity recognizes something dangerous in them. Most of us will never build a secret lair inside a volcano, but every one of us faces smaller versions of the same choices. Do I need more? Do I have to be right? Can I listen? Can I share power? Can I care about people affected by my decisions? Villains don't shoot forth from the womb being villains. They grow into this role. Most villains in these stories don't start out lacking. Bond villains are rarely poor. Kings who become tyrants already have kingdoms. Corporate villains already have money. The problem isn't that they don't have enough. The problem is they can't imagine an enough. And maybe that's the real warning hidden inside these stories. But what are they really looking for? On the surface, the answer seems obvious. Money, power, control, recognition. Yet, those things usually stand in for something deeper. Money promises security. Power promises significance. Control promises safety. Certainty promises freedom from fear. At their core, these are human longings. We all want to feel safe. We all want to be loved. We all want to matter. We all want our lives to mean something. The tragedy is that villains keep reaching for substitutes. They look outside themselves for something they hope will satisfy a longing within. Most of us will never try to take over the world, but we know what it feels like to think, if I just had a little more money, then I'd be okay. If people would just listen to me, then everything would work. If I could just control the situation, then I'd finally feel at peace. If I could just prove I'm right, then I'd feel secure. The scale is different, but the temptation is the same. Perhaps that's why these stories keep returning. Not to warn us about evil people, but to warn us about what happens when we make our fears, desires, or ambitions the center of our lives. The ancient biblical phrase isn't that money is the root of all evil. It's that the love of money is the root of all evil. Money is a tool. The same is true of power and control and certainty and success. None of them are inherently bad, but when we ask them to make us whole, they begin to distort us. Maybe that's why every villain eventually becomes isolated, disconnected from others, unable to trust, unable to see the humanity of others, unable to love and be loved. In pursuing what they thought would save them, they lost the very things that make life meaningful. So the question becomes, what are we pursuing? More power, more certainty, more influence? And can we act from a place of love instead? The heroes in these stories aren't distinguished by superpowers or wealth or domination. They're distinguished by what they protect, what they value: friendship, loyalty, compassion, justice, sacrifice, connection. In other words, relationships. In other words, love. The hero and the villain are often seeking the same things: safety, significance, purpose, belonging. The difference is where they look for them. The villain tries to possess them. The hero learns to practice them. The people we continue to admire decades or centuries later are rarely remembered for what they accumulated. They're remembered for their courage, their humility, their willingness to serve, and their care for people who had less power than they did. And maybe that's the lesson underneath these stories. We become what we pursue. If we spend our lives chasing things that can never truly satisfy us, we slowly become shaped by that pursuit. But if we cultivate love for ourselves, love for others, and love for the mystery larger than ourselves, we begin to grow into something different. The costumes change, the setting of the stories change, the centuries pass, yet humanity keeps telling the same tale. And every generation gets to decide which characters it wants to imitate. The person who can never imagine an enough. The strong man, the genius who believes rules don't apply to him. Or the person who uses whatever power they have in service of something larger than themselves. Our stories have been asking that question for a very long time. Maybe they're asking it of us now, asking us to grow more love. We don't understand the mysteries of the universe, but we can grow more love. Love for ourselves, love for others, and love for the infinite mystery that lays beyond our understanding. Thank you for tuning in.